Welcome to Excel Magic Trick number 1351. Hey, if you want to download this Excel file, Excel Magic Trick 1351 start, or the finished file, or the zipped folder with text files, so you can follow along, click on the link below the video. Wow, we got a great video here. We're going to use Power Query to merge text and Excel files and end up with a Power Query report that has a total row and slicer. Here's all of the steps we're going to do, but here's a visual. And we'll go look at these text files in a second. But we have multiple text files that we need to merge together. But we also have a lookup table that has our prices for each one of the products, and that's an Excel table. We need to combine both of these. We'll actually have two intermediate queries that we will then merge into our final reports. In the process, we'll get to see two different helper columns, including how to create and use the if function in Power Query. And this will be our final report. Total revenue for each one of our products, a total row down at the bottom, and a slicer for company. Now we're going to start off by going and looking at the text files. Over here in Windows Explorer, that's the zipped folder you download. And inside there's start files and two text files on the outside. If I double click and look in here, these are the two files we're going to initially import. And then later, after we build our report, we'll dump the other two files and see that the whole reporting system will update. Now let's double click and open this text file. Tab delimited. There's date, product.company, and units. So we'll actually have to get product name before the dot, and then GB and CB. We'll have to split that out and then add an extra column to convert from GB to gel boomerangs and CB to Colorado boomerangs. All right, let's close this text file, and we're going to go to our start file. Here's our start file. Now I'm on the sheet prices. That will be an Excel table with prices we'll import later. But we're going to start off by going to Power Query. And in Excel 2016, you simply go to the Data Ribbon tab. And there it is, Get and Transform. If you're in Excel 2010 or 13, you have to download and install as an extra tab. Now we're going to start off by importing text files. So we go to New Query, From File, and then this awesome feature down here, From Folder. When I click From Folder, it'll ask me where that folder is. I click Browse. I have mine on the desktop. I'm very carefully going to open up 1351. By the way, if you have a folder that has folders and files inside, if I were to point Power Query to this, it would import all the files inside this folder and any other subfolders. But the one we want is Start Files. When I click OK, I'm telling Power Query, go and get all the files in that folder. Click OK. There's an intermediate step we definitely want to edit, so I'm going to click Edit to open up Power Query. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come over and name this. I'm going to give it a smart name, something like Source Text Files, and Enter. Now, this is just looking in that folder and listing different attributes of those files. Now, if we were sure that we'd always have text files, we could just go over here and get rid of all of these. But I'm going to be careful here. And in case we get a .txt that is capital or a .txt that is lowercase, I'm going to transform this column. Right-click, Transform, and say, please always convert to lowercase. You can see over here our applied steps. Now I'm going to make sure that only text files get imported. Click the filter, Text Files equals, and now .txt. Notice these are lowercase, and Power Query is definitely case sensitive. Click OK. Now there's our steps. We don't need any of these columns, so I simply come over to Content, and there's that double downward pointing arrow that we see when we're importing text files. When I click this, it will expand all of the files and get rid of all of these other columns. So I click double downward pointing arrow. And look at that. There's a bunch of steps over here. We can go to Combine Binaries, Import CSV. We can even look over here and see the field names for the first file are right there. But notice the next step, Promote Headers, it promotes them. But it actually left the other field names down below. It also changed the type. So there we have the icon for whole number, the icon for text, the icon for date. Now remember, there are some extra field names down below, so we're going to filter those out by clicking the filter button. And filters inside Power Query, Power Pivot, Excel, always will show a unique list. Now, it's not showing all of the items, so I'm definitely going to click Load More. And sure enough, there it is. Product.company name. I want to uncheck that so that I filter out any mistaken field names down below in files that are imported. When I click OK, it adds another step. Now, our next step is I need to split product and company name. So I highlight this column, home, they're split. We can say split by delimiter. Our delimiter, which just means there's some text item that separates the two fields. I don't see period here, so I come down to custom. And I can simply type a period. Now, we're only going to have one, so none of these options here affect us. When I click OK, boom, there it is split. Now, this column we're going to keep, so I'm going to double-click the field name and call this product, and enter. Now, this one, I want to convert GB to gel boomerangs, CB to Colorado boomerangs. Now, we would do some sort of lookup situation if we had lots of companies, and the companies potentially would change in the future, but we only have 2 companies. So I'm simply going to use add column, custom column. This will be our helper column, like if we were over in Excel. I'm going to call this company. Now, notice there are some field names from our data set over here available for us. We want to use the if function. Now, actually, we do not have to type this out, and I'll show you. There is an option for, and you can see over here, there's a conditional column, and it has a user interface that makes it pretty easy. But I do want to take a look at how the if function works in Power Query, because it's much different than Excel. I cannot type capital IF and open parentheses like we would over in Excel. We have to use lowercase if, then a space, and then we put our logical test. Now, I'm going to double-click this field name over here, and then I'm going to say equal sign anytime you're equal to, in double quotes, GB, capitalization matters, and double quote. When that comes out true, what do I want? I typed a space, and now I'm going to say then space. If we were over in Excel, we would have simply typed a comma. But here we say then, if it's true, what do we want? In double quotes, I'm going to type gel boomerangs. Now we put a space and then the word else, space. Now over in Excel, we would simply have put a comma and then put value of false. The value of false for us will be Colorado boomerangs and double quote. And that is our if function in Power Query. When I click OK, boom, there it is. There's our added custom column. Now, we do not need this column, so I'm going to right-click Remove. We're done with this table now. We will come back and merge it later, but we need to load it. So Home, Close, and Load. Definitely close and load to. We want only create a connection. Click Load. There's table number 1. Now we need to import this table, so clicking in a single cell in this official Excel table, which has already been named under Design. It's called Prices. Once we have an Excel table, we can take data from Excel into Power Query. Data ribbon tab, and there it is, From Table button. Prices is a fine name. It added one step where it changed the type. We see that this is a decimal. This is text. This will work fine. Close and load to. Only create connection, load. Now we have our 2 tables. Now, before we merge these 2 tables, I actually want to open up source text files and edit it. Anytime we need to edit these queries, we simply double-click. And I forgot to do one step. When we created this helper column, I forgot to convert data type. So I'm going to click the ABC123 and select text. It added a step to the bottom. Now I simply click the button because it's already been saved as a connection only, and now it's updated. Now we need to merge these two. What we really need to do is for the source text files, we need to add an extra column with prices. So we're going to merge these two tables. Now, when we merge two tables, it's like doing VLOOKUP in Excel or creating a relationship in Power Pivot. In order to merge, you have to have these two tables as a connection only. Now we go up to Data, New Query, Combine Queries, and there it is. Merge is our VLOOKUP or relationships. It wants to know which two tables. I'm going to select Source Text Files. That's our first query. And select the product column. Here in this product column, each one of these represents a transaction. And there can be many duplicates, like, for example, 2 quads. Now let's go to our lookup table and select prices. Now I'm going to click on product. In Excel, we think of this as a lookup table. We can look up quad over here, retrieve the price, and bring it back in an extra helper column. If we're in Power Pivot, there would be a relationship, a one-to-many relationship. Now we need to decide which join kind. We're going to do left outer. That means all from the first, matching from the second. If we did something like inner only, and there were products in our sales table that did not have a lookup price, it would eliminate those. So we definitely want left outer, all from the first, matching from the second. Now when I click OK, we will have our helper column. Well, wait a second, it came in as a table. You can click off to the side and view. Oh, that's right. The table we merged has 2 columns, and we only want price. So now I'm going to come up to the double expand button, which is what we see when we have multiple fields that we can expand. So I'm going to click on that, unselect all, select price only, because that's the only column I want. Uncheck use original column as prefix, and click OK. There is our price. And there is our data type. Now we're going to take units and price and multiply them to get revenue. We can do that with add column, custom column. This is our helper column. I'm going to highlight this and call it revenue tab. This is where we create our formula. Here are our fields. I can double-click price times units, but I actually want to round. If we were in Excel, we would use round, but that does not work over here. We have to use Number.Round. Now, we have to make sure it's spelled right and we have the right case. Open parentheses. Now, in the first argument of Number.Round, we can simply double-click price times double-click units. That is our first argument. Now we type a comma. And the second argument is, which position do you want to round to? We want to round to the dollar in this high-level report. So I'm going to put a 0. If I was rounding to the penny, I'd put a 2. To the dollar, we put a 0. Close parenthesis. Now Number.Round does bankers rounding or halfway even rounding. It's the same type of rounding you see in Excel VBA round function or in most databases. Over large sets of numbers, it's more accurate than the standard rounding we learned in school. That formula will work. Click OK. Immediately come up to data type icon. Click. And I'm going to say decimal number. Now look at that. I didn't spell it correctly. And if I come back to this step, added custom and double click, if I were to change this, it's going to cause trouble, but this will be a good lesson. I'm going to change it to revenue and click OK. Now I'm going to click down on change type, and of course we get this step error. The entire thing didn't work because here's our table.transform column types function. There's the name of the previous step, added columns, right there. Then comma, and using list syntax, it needs the name of the field and the type. Type is number. So I'm going to come here, backspace E, and enter. And just like that, we've edited this change type step. Now all we need is revenue, company, and product. And I want the columns in the resulting table to start with product, company, and revenue. If I were to highlight them this way, click on revenue, then hold Control, notice because I selected revenue first, that column would actually show up first in the order of columns displayed. So I'm very carefully going to click on product. Holding Control, I'm going to click on company and then revenue. Now I right-click, remove other columns. Now our next step is to add all of the revenue for Sunshine by Gel Boomerangs and all the quads by Gel Boomerangs. Now over in Excel, we'd use a pivot table or the SUMIFS function. Here in Power Query and most databases, we use the Group By feature. Now, we need to highlight these first two columns. I'm going to hold Control and click on Company. By highlighting two of these columns, when I click Group By, it will give me a unique list of product and company, and then it will ask, which column do you want to make an aggregate calculation on? We're going to make the aggregate calculation sum on the revenue column. So go up to Group By. There it is, Group By Product Category. That will give us a unique list. The new column with our aggregate calculation is going to be called Total Revenue. Our operation or our function will be sum. We want to add on the revenue column. And there it is, Group By in Power Query and databases. It's just like our SUMIFS or pivot table over in Excel. I click OK, and there it is. Now we have our steps over here. We're ready to load this, but I definitely want to give this a good name. So I'm going to come over and call this Merge Tables Final Report and Enter. This will be the name of the query if we need to edit it. It will also be the name of the Excel table that gets loaded when we load this report. Home, close and load to. Actually, we want to put this on a new sheet, so I'm simply going to click the Close and Load button, and that is the default. Please put it on a new sheet. I'm going to come down here, double-click, and call this something like Final Report and Enter. Now I'm going to Control and use the wheel on my mouse to zoom in. We can see there is our query over there. If we need to edit it, we go back and double-click. But we want to take this column here, highlight it, and I'm going to use Control-1 because I want to apply number formatting. Currency, 0 decimal places, and OK. Now, I need this report to have a total. Now, we can add a total row because this is an Excel table. And it will totally expand later when we drop new files into that folder and we get new products. This report will update, but so will the total row. Now, there's a couple ways we can add total rows. Right-click, Table, Totals Row, or up to Table Tools. There's the total row. Or watch this, there's a keyboard. The keyboard for the sum function in Excel is Alt equal, but if your cursor is below a column in a table, Alt equals, it knows to add the total row. Now, the total row is actually the subtotal function, which means if we start filtering up here, it will add only the filtered items. 109 means the sum function. Now, I want to add a slicer. So I'm going to click somewhere in this table. Design, up to Slicer. I'm going to check Company, click OK. Drag it off to the side, point to the edge. We can move it. I'm going to click back in the table, and here we have Table Tools and Query Tools. I want Table Tools, and I'm going to add some blue style. Now I can come over here and slice this table to see only Colorado boomerangs, only gel boomerangs, and unfilter. I'm going to highlight maybe the first 4 rows. Right-click, Insert. Click on the slicer, Options. Let's give it 2 columns. Drag the bottom up. We'll put it above our table. And now we have our slicer. Now I'm going to unfilter. That's pretty amazing. Let's go test Power Query, because why did we do it this way? We used Power Query. We had to clean up and separate product and the abbreviation for company, then add an extra helper column to get the company name, then calculate total revenue based off the text files and Excel files. Well, we could have done all of that in Excel, right? But here's the magic of Power Query. If I go back over to my folder, there's the original files. I'm going to click on the top folder here and then highlight both quarter 3 and quarter 4. Control C. Double click to open up Start Files. Control V to paste. Now, remember, Power Query is pointing at that folder. When we go back over to our final report, I'm going to come over to the table, right-click, refresh. And look at that over here. It totally updated, brought in quarter 3 and quarter 4, including some new products. That is amazing. By the way, also, if we decided to dump this as a table, we certainly could have not done our grouping in this step here and created a table and then a pivot table. But in this case, all we wanted to see was total revenue and product and be able to slice it. Wow, that was a lot of fun with Power Query. We took our text files and our Excel table, merged them, created a couple intermediate queries, our final merged query, including a couple of helper formulas, and our final report. All right, that's a lot of fun with Power Query. We'll see you next video.